European expansion in the 15th century began the system that would become the Atlantic slave trade. The triangular trade connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas through goods, crops, and forced labor.
Many Africans were captured or sold through local conflicts, feeding the growing transatlantic trade.
European forts on African coasts became key sites where enslaved people were held before shipment. European goods like textiles and weapons were exchanged for enslaved Africans at coastal markets.
Before the voyage, enslaved people were gathered in coastal camps, often under harsh conditions.
Merchants grew wealth, while enslaved people paid the human cost of the trade.
Ships were prepared to carry hundreds of captives across the Atlantic in the Middle Passage. Over 4 centuries, more than 12 million Africans were forced into the transatlantic slave trade. The Atlantic slave trade began with expansion, trade, and exploitation that reshaped the world. Slave ships were overcrowded, with captives packed tightly in harsh and inhumane conditions. The Middle Passage crossed the Atlantic, with storms and dangers adding to suffering on the voyage. Food was scarce. Captives were given little water and meager rations for survival. Overcrowding and poor sanitation spread diseases, causing countless deaths during the Middle Passage.
Captives endured despair, but sometimes shared songs and memories to keep hope alive.
Some captives resisted on ships, but uprisings were often crushed by armed crews.
Many perished during the voyage, their lives lost at sea, unrecorded in history.
Merchants saw enslaved people as cargo, reducing human lives to profit. The Middle Passage spanned thousands of miles, weeks or months of suffering at sea. The Middle Passage mixed human tragedy with economic gain, shaping Atlantic history. Upon arrival, ships brought both goods and enslaved Africans into American ports.
Enslaved Africans were sold at auctions, treated as property instead of human beings. Families were often separated at sales, creating lifelong pain and loss. Plantation economies of sugar, tobacco, and cotton relied on enslaved labor.
Colonial laws defined enslaved Africans as property, enforcing strict control over their lives. In the Americas, enslaved people had no legal rights, locked into systems of control.
The arrival of enslaved Africans fueled trade, enriching ports in the Americas and Europe.
Africans brought traditions of music and belief, colliding with colonial cultures.
Even from the beginning, enslaved Africans resisted through defiance, escape, and solidarity.
Arrival in the Americas marked a new stage, forced labor feeding colonies and reshaping societies. Enslaved people worked long hours in fields, from sunrise to sunset.
Many also labored in workshops, grinding sugarcane or processing tobacco for export.
Overseers enforced strict control, using violence and fear to maintain order.
Enslaved families lived in simple huts with few possessions, often crowded together.
Meals were plain: cornmeal, beans, or rice, just enough to survive the work.
Medical care was limited. Enslaved people relied on herbs and traditional knowledge. At night, music and storytelling gave enslaved communities strength and cultural identity.
Faith blended African traditions with Christianity, creating hope under oppression. The constant threat of punishment reminded enslaved people of their lack of freedom.
Daily life mixed labor, hardship, and small moments of culture that kept communities alive.
Music connected enslaved Africans to their roots, carrying rhythms of their homeland.
Dance was expression and survival, blending African movement with new influences.
Oral storytelling preserved wisdom, history, and humor across generations.
New Creole languages emerged, mixing African words with European tongues.
African beliefs blended with Christianity, creating unique spiritual traditions.
Faith gave enslaved people strength, hope, and courage to endure hardship.
Community bonds provided care and support, sustaining families under oppression.
Festivals and rituals kept African heritage alive, even in foreign lands.
Practicing songs and rituals was a quiet form of resistance to oppression.
Culture gave enslaved people identity, strength, and connection across the Atlantic world.
Resistance began with small acts, working slowly, breaking tools, or refusing orders. Keeping songs, stories, and rituals alive was itself an act of defiance. Many risked escape, seeking freedom in forests, mountains, or distant towns.
Networks, later known as the Underground Railroad, helped enslaved people flee to freedom.
Some enslaved groups secretly organized, planning ways to resist together.
The Haitian Revolution showed enslaved people could rise, creating the first Black Republic.
Across the Americas, enslaved people led uprisings, though many were violently suppressed.
Leaders like Louverture and Tubman became symbols of courage and freedom. Every act of resistance, big or small, challenged the system of slavery and inspired hope.
And in the name of liberty, we declare all chains broken.
The abolition movement united voices across nations, laying groundwork for emancipation.
After emancipation, freedom brought new hope, but life remained difficult for many formerly enslaved people. Legal freedom did not erase inequality. Racism and poverty remained obstacles.
Freed communities built schools, churches, and institutions to support new generations.
African traditions survived through music, stories, and culture, shaping the Americas forever.
The legacy of slavery reshaped global economies, cultures, and societies.
Historians study slavery to understand its impact and ensure lessons are not forgotten. Memorials honor enslaved people, reminding future generations of their struggle and humanity.
Teaching this history helps ensure truth is remembered and injustice is never repeated.
The story of slavery calls us to pursue justice, equality, and human dignity today.
Your life as an Atlantic slave was marked by suffering, resistance, and legacy that still shapes our world.